Welcome to season 5 of the B2B Community Builder Show. As we're going live here on Facebook, we are good to go. We are officially live on Facebook. It is the season 5 B2B Community Builder Show. Today, we are talking about how to win big at your next trade show with a man who leads a company that I greatly admire, has won Best Places to Work multiple times, has won Inc. 500 fastest growing companies multiple times. I've had the joy and pleasure to see the culture that he has built and the, kind of the camaraderie that is a unified team on a mission to solve a big, big problem that affects us all indirectly or directly, whether you're in it. And it is the theme of hospital-acquired infections control. And while that might not sound like the sexiest topic, he has somehow become the coolest kid at the party in this industry. And it's no surprise. He's the host of the Clean Talk podcast. He's a guy who I unabashedly text because I want to be more like him when I grow up. He is Brad Whitchurch. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Well, thanks for having me, Pablo. That was quite an introduction. Happy to be on the show today.
Happy to have you, Brad. Happy to have you indeed, man. This has been a long time coming. And while we are going to talk about trade show strategies, you almost didn't do the show today because you thought it was Super Bowl Monday. You want to tell me why you almost didn't do the show today thinking it was Super Bowl Monday?
That's right. Well, the NFL added an extra week to the schedule. So Super Bowl is actually this Sunday and Super Bowl Monday is a week from today. And here at Seal Shield, Super Bowl Monday is a company holiday. So Seal Shield is closed on Super Bowl Monday. I was willing to make an exception and show up for you, but now we don't have that conflict.
I did. I called in a favor. You were in. I just wanted to bring that up because it is one of these unique things, right? Like on the show, we do really are talking to leaders that are leading, high growth companies that are also winning Best Place to Work awards. I think that's a really unique part of your culture. The ownership mentality stuff and ownership thinking is a unique part of your culture. But today I'm going to just fawn over your trade show strategies and all the really cool stuff that you have done. Before that, quick roll call to those of you that are joining us today. Cameron Schmidt is in the house. He is a sick endurance athlete. Cameron, I just ran my first half marathon this weekend. Ice Artie, welcome to the show. Julie Ann Eason, she is the category queen of ghostwriters, who's written a couple of really high profile ghostwriting books. Good to have you. Russ Verhovec. I don't even know if I said, how do you pronounce Russ's last name?
Verhovec.
All right, thanks. Russ in a weekend full of really talented people, really shined and really showed the talent that you guys have on this. And we got Trina Sorecchia, who I just met last week. She signed up for our Relationship Flywheel Bootcamp. And Jen fills in the fairy godmother of the Not Your Average Investor Show community. Welcome to the show. We want you participating, right? Ask questions here in the chat, ask questions in the Q&A. We'll involve it in the show. But for right now, I got a question for you, Brad.
Shoot.
What makes trade shows a unique opportunity, right? Like you're somebody that has capitalized on it, which to me means that you have seen it, you identify why it's such a special moment in your eyes when you think about trade shows and conferences. What makes you want to invest heavily and strategize around them?
Well, what makes trade shows special is that's an opportunity to meet face to face with your prospects. At Seal Shield, we also use it as an opportunity for team building. So, within our own organization, and just being able to have that direct face-to-face engagement with a prospect or a customer is what makes trade shows so special and such an important part of our marketing activities here at Seal Shield.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. I see it as like a giant watering hole, right? Like it's like where the whole market kind of comes together. You're able to interact with prospects, clients, partners, and your team all in one place. I have been able to see you guys do it, and you do it at a really, really high level. And unsurprisingly, when I was kind of meeting you, you told me that you gotta put the company on the map at a trade show. You want to tell us the origin story of when Seal Shield became the cool kid in the infection control industry?
Well, I appreciate that characterization, but yeah, we really started the company in the trade show circuit. So when we first developed the world's first dishwasher safe keyboard and mouse back in 2006, we launched that product early 2007 at the HIMSS Healthcare IT Trade Show. That year, it was in New Orleans. And our experience was, we were trying to get the products together. We didn't know if we'd actually have samples, if the product would be ready to go. And at the last minute, we green lighted the trade show. And because it was last minute, we were actually able to get a great booth space from someone who had canceled. And we were right at the front of the convention center. So all the people waiting to get in, all the attendees waiting to get in the morning, were standing behind a rope just looking at our booth. And it was an insane experience. We were 20 people deep. The whole show, I was just myself and an unpaid intern, and we'd done a press release. So the phone was ringing off the hook, and we really hit the ground running. And we launched it all. It all started at that first HIMSS trade show back in 2007.
So it started at the first HIMSS trade shows. I remember you kind of telling me there was a couple lessons learned at that first show of like why things work. You want to kind of dive into your initial lessons learned, and then we'll go into kind of like how you've evolved since then.
Sure. Well, when you're starting out, you're doing everything on a shoestring budget. And so I think we actually circumvented the loading dock fees, and we were running into the convention center with security chasing us, pushing a portable dishwasher. And our booth setup was a portable dishwasher with keyboards and mice in it. And we had a bin of water where you could type in on a keyboard underwater and see it type on the laptop screen. And the whole booth was just a giant photo of a keyboard in water, a 10-foot by 10-foot photo backdrop behind us. And it was amazing to just see people stop in their tracks by that image, and the fact that you had keyboards in a dishwasher. It's just like, does not compute. And I've shared with you before, Pablo, the experience was incredible because we had multi-million-dollar booths all around us, and people would walk right by those booths, stop in their tracks at our shoestring budget booth with our dishwasher and our bucket of water. And as I said, we were 20 people deep the entire trade show. It was a great trade show experience. We'd done a press release, so the phone was ringing off the hook, and we'll talk about kind of pre-trade show strategies, press release being one of them. But that was our experience, that you can actually, on a shoestring budget, start your trade show experience. And of course, we've evolved since then, but a lot of the practices that we keep today in terms of our trade show strategy really develop from that economics model. When we go to trade shows, we share rooms. That started as an economic necessity, and now it's become part of our culture. Now to be fair, that allows us to stay at some nicer places. So people are willing to share rooms, and we operate on the buddy system, and it's really strengthened our culture, even though that started as an economic necessity.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So when I hear, I love that you guys do the buddy system, right? Because like it's clear that there is chemistry happening in your team, and you guys are all hanging out. And spoiler alert, you no longer are super cheap on what you're doing at the trade shows. You go pretty big, and we're going to talk about some of that. But one of the things that stands out to me in the strategy, as my dog barks in the background, is that that underwater keyboard created like a experiential thing for people to come, look, touch, and interact with it, while $1 million booths around it, correct me if I'm wrong, or they were just kind of like handing out squishy toys and towels and fidget spinners? Like, is that kind of what you see as your overall strategy going forward, is bringing people in to interact with the display?
Well, that's right. You've got, there's thousands of exhibitors, or at least hundreds of exhibitors, depending on the size of the trade show you're going to. And so you have to differentiate yourself. And it really, our first trade show experience proved to us that it's not how much you spend on the booth, it's the image that you're projecting. And people want to see something different, something novel. And if you can project that in your trade show booth, that's how you're going to get results. As you mentioned, a lot of exhibitors at the trade shows have giveaways, and there's nothing wrong with giveaways. Giveaways are an important part of the trade show experience. You want to have people go home with something that reminds them of your company. But where I see so many companies make a mistake is that that they draw people into their booths with a giveaway for maybe a Nintendo system or an electric guitar, Sony PlayStation. And that's a big mistake, because then you end up getting 1,000 leads of people that are interested in a Nintendo or a PlayStation or an electric guitar, and they're not interested in the products that you're selling. And the purpose of the trade show is to identify those prospects and opportunities. And you don't want to have your salespeople in their post trade show tactics spending time weeding through people that have no interest in your products. So with Seal Shield, what we try to do is have giveaways that are related to our product, maybe a product sample, something related to infection control that's branded, something that really accentuates Seal Shield's products and services, and will remind those prospects of who we are and where they got that giveaway. So in terms of giveaways, that would be my first tip. Don't give away something that's not related to your company and product, because you're just creating more work for yourself, filtering through those leads on the back end.
Yeah, that's kind of like this counterintuitive thing that people fail to realize. It's this idea that it's not that you want more leads, it's that you want good leads. And it reminds me of one of the things that I most read, right? I've talked to you about this. I'm a fanatical about category design, and there's this newsletter called Category Pirates. They did a whole newsletter on giveaways and gifts during the holidays, and it essentially talked exactly what you're saying, right? So smartest guys in the marketing room wrote this like 10,000 page article about basically what you just said. If you have a giveaway, if it doesn't tie to your category, if it doesn't tie to your brand, you're essentially burning money, and not just on the product, but in the follow-up to people that don't really necessarily care. You also mentioned the press release piece. Can you talk about, I would love for you to talk about how you think through the press release piece, but I also, asking for a friend here, how do you even execute a press release for a trade show? Do they all have, do you do it directly with the conference? Do you have a PR agency? Can you just kind of give me the press release playbook?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to utilize press releases. We typically write our press releases in-house, and we use a wire surface like PR Newswire to get them blasted out. When you know that you do a big trade show every year, for us it's HIMSS, we try to arrange our product development announcements around the trade show. We find that those press releases in conjunction with a trade show get a lot of traction. That's not always going to be the case. You don't always have a new product coming out that you want to announce, but we do find that those press releases, those type of press releases, new innovation, new discovery, something new, that gets traction. And our strategy that we've learned utilizing press releases, and by the way, we use them for just about every trade show. Some announcements are bigger than others, but we always try to incorporate a trade show as, a press release as part of our trade show strategy. And that's really the pre-trade show strategy. So we may have, in fact, for HIMSS, I think we have 3 press releases that we'll be dropping. We like to do one a week prior to the show, especially or at least 4 or 5 days prior to the show, within a week of the show. For the big trade shows, people are planning their days out. And so they're kind of doing their research ahead of time to see which companies and which exhibitors they want to visit. So we like to get an early press release out that sparks interest for people to make appointments with us pre-show. And then we usually have a press release that drops the day of the show, or maybe the day before the show, another major announcement about, come by the booth to see this new product, that kind of thing. So that's the timing that we utilize with our press release drops. And that's been highly effective for us to drive that initial traffic to the booth, get initial appointments set up prior to the show. We always use press releases as part of our pre-show strategy.
So that makes me think of another thing in category design, which is the well-orchestrated lightning strike, right? Like this idea that you can put all your resources towards this one moment to really capture the market's attention, and using a trade show is perfect. Are you involving your product kind of team and your customer service team to think about when you launch a new product or an update around the show? Are you kind of like it? How does it fit into the rest of your operations when you know that you're going to have to issue a press release before a trade show?
Well, the product guys are always frantically being beaten on to get some samples if it's a new product, and the timing doesn't always work out for those announcements. Actually, so a lot of times we'll use the trade show to vet a new product. So maybe a product that's not even in production yet, we'll do an announcement. We have some samples, we get input from the market at the trade show, and then maybe as a result of that input, we expedite the product production, or maybe we shelved it. So the trade shows can really be great for product development, getting input from the market. And so regardless of the stage that the new product is in, we're trying to make that announcement around the trade show. Sometimes it works out great that the products hit the shelves. Sometimes we just have some samples. Sometimes it's completely vaporware, and it may not even materialize from that point, depending on the feedback we get from the trade show.
That's interesting that it's not just a release, but it's also just like a test of market, right? Like I equate that kind of like how I use social media posts, right? Like with my messaging, right? Like I'll throw something out there. If it acts really, really well on social media, then I know that I have something that I can cook with fire here, like the boot camp we launched. It's interesting to think of that in a healthcare tech, industry where you have so much more developmental costs that you can leverage a trade show as just kind of like a shoot a ping pong out there before you make it a cannonball. I think that's really, really smart, man. All right, let's talk about the progression of what you guys have been doing. Give me some other trade show strategies, cool trade show stories of big wins and ideas that you're proud of.
Well, I've got a bunch of them. We've learned a lot over the years, and of course, the economics change as you grow and you have success. And we talked about some of the giveaways that companies do at the trade shows. More important than that, I think, is the experiential giveaways. So people remember experiences that they have. And to the extent that you can leverage those experiences to build relationships with customers or prospects, that's always a goal of ours. So we always plan big events for trade shows. Pablo, you went to HIMSS in Las Vegas with us back in August, and we had rented out the whole first 3 rows for the Usher concert. We had customers there, some prospects there, and a bunch of our team there. And of course, we were easy to spot because we all wear bright blue surgical scrubs, being that we're in the healthcare space. And that was one of the big ideas that came about. And we've talked about this, but the HIMSS Healthcare Show, which is our biggest trade show every year, is an IT healthcare show. And it's always been a fairly formal show. A lot of people wear suits to the show. And a few years ago, our then chief sales officer, Scott Fillion, suggested that we start wearing medical scrubs as a marketing tool to promote our healthcare space, our healthcare position. And I was really opposed to it because it is a formal show. We wear sport coats and suits, but the team convinced me to try the scrubs, and it worked out fantastic. So we were all wearing bright blue Seal Shield scrubs, and we made a pact to wear them for the entire time of the show. So not just at the trade show, but at night, out at dinner, in the mornings, at breakfast. And we've got a large group of people. We're like a walking billboard, and we got immediate recognition. People started seeing, who are those guys? And then that's the Seal Shield guys. And before you knew it, other people started wearing scrubs to the trade show. So I will take credit for Seal Shield starting that trend. And not only are we more comfortable at the shows, but it's a great marketing gimmick. And then it really plays out when you do events at night. And as a team, everybody's dressed up together in bright blue scrubs. Everybody at that Usher concert knew who we were. And we've had many experiences like that. We had front row seats for Lionel Richie a few years ago in Las Vegas. We were all wearing the bright blue scrubs, and Lionel was talking to me on the microphone. And at the end of the show, everybody had seen us. They wanted to take their pictures with us. And then the next day at the trade show, people are like, hey, were you at the Lionel Richie concert last night? And it just builds this whole awareness. And it also really projects that you're having fun. Because if you're not having fun, trade shows are work, but you've got to have fun, and people want to engage with people who are having fun. So customers and prospects, if all other things are consistent, they like to be around people that they enjoy being around and people they can have fun with. And if you are deliberate about creating these experiential events around the trade shows, and then you develop a reputation for that, you find that people want to engage with you. The same people every year want to know what's going on, and you develop those relationships that turn those prospects into buying customers. And so that's something we've really embraced, and we're proud of the fact that we have that reputation, that we do good things, we make great products, but we like to have fun, and we share that not only with our employees, but with our customers and prospects.
Love that, man. Just unpacking a couple of things that are continually sticking out to me. One is strategy, right? Like, while you're talking about all these fun things, you're always thinking ahead of the time how whatever you're doing is going to key into everything else. As an example, right, like the press release, and planning product launches so people have something to talk about. Then you're consistently talking about experiential things, right? Like how you can engineer ways for either people at the talk show to interact with the product or interact with your team. And third, which is another, big category design thing, is everything you're doing is different, right? Like it is figuring out a way to be unique in your own way, while being easily visible, and also all the story coming back, right? Like the idea of getting front row tickets at a concert and everybody wearing something like in a team fashion, so that you're wearing all week long, so that propensity for serendipity, that Lionel Richie could hand you a microphone because all of a sudden he realized that you're rolling 20 deep in the front row and he wants to interact with who are these guys in the blue scrubs, right? Like, and then other people seeing it and that causing a magnifying effect around it, to me is like sheer brilliance, right? Like when you put all that stuff together, it makes sense. What if you read The Tipping Point, right? Like that's how stuff spreads, right? Like you are strategic about things like that, going together. Let me ask you a really basic question, because there's other genius. Did you have something to add to that?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that, these things, these experiential events don't just happen by accident. And that has to be part of the pre-show planning process as well. You've got to get as far in front of these trade shows as you can if you want to book exciting events, especially some of the big trade shows. If you go to CES or HIMSS and you show up, everything's sold out. So that's another big tip that I'll give you. Go ahead and make dinner reservations as far in advance as you can. I'm on that countdown. So if they allow reservations 45 days in advance, 45 days in advance, I'm making a reservation for 8 people one night. If it's 60 days in advance, 60 days in advance, I'm making a reservation for 8 people. And I do that for every night of the trade show. Now, when you get to the trade show, if you have to cancel a dinner reservation, or if you can't fill in with a prospect and you only show up with 5 or 6 people, who cares? But if you get to the trade show and all of a sudden the hot prospect wants to give you some time and you can't get a dinner reservation, you've lost out. And certainly if you want to get great tickets, and I'm not talking about being up in the second balcony, if you want to be in the first couple of rows of some of the big shows that are going on during trade shows in whatever city that is, you've got to get far in front of it, and then you promote it. And so you get the right people invited. I like to hold a couple of tickets aside because you always run into someone at the show that's the hot prospect, and then boom, you've got it set up where they can do something amazing. And we've done a lot of concerts, we've done Top Golf, we've done bowling, of course, great dinners, but you have to plan in advance for that. And then I'll make another tip here. So you plan in advance for your restaurant and your experiences for customers and prospects. But when it comes to the hotel reservations, a lot of times the trade shows will book up blocks of hotels. And so all the hotel reservations are extremely expensive. So a little tip is that when you go to these big trade shows, if the rooms are too expensive and you're operating on a shoestring budget, much as Seal Shield has done in the past, go ahead and book the cheap room, because the first day of the trade show, all of a sudden the room rates dump because they drop those holds. And so if you have to spend the first night in Vegas at the Excalibur, because that was the only thing that your budget would allow, be sure to check the rooms the first day of the show, because all of a sudden the Bellagio might be the same price for the rest of the week. So plan ahead for your dinners and your experiences, but then be ready to make an adjustment the day of the show with your accommodations, because you might be able to save some money and get into a better accommodation.
Oh, that's a pro tip right there. I love balling on it. Like I love hacks to get like VIP experiences for low price. That's awesome, man. Really, really practical. Jen fills in is saying golden nuggets for Brad. She wants a Seal Shield set of scrubs, by the way. And she,
Absolutely.
she has a technical, she also brings up that she's had some big wins because she gets to teach at trade shows. And every time she teaches, she gets some clients. I wonder, do you guys ever approach the strategy of like paying for a sponsorship in order to get some like stage time, anything like that? Have you guys ever experimented with that?
We've done a lot of that, and that's also part of the pre-trade show prep. So the marketing team will schedule various publicity events quite often. So show up on someone's podcast like yours, Pablo. They do some filming right on the show floor at a lot of the events. And then some of them have the teaching or the speaking opportunities. And we'll have one of our science guys quite often speak. In fact, I think Christian Davis is speaking at HIMSS this year. We are also very engaged. And here's another tip. We try to schedule other community events around the trade shows. So we started a healthcare advisory council, and the genesis of that was that we could meet at HIMSS, because all of our healthcare advisory council members are already budgeted to fly in. We might put them up for an extra night or two at a hotel. None of them do it for pay. So, we'll take them out to a nice dinner, spend a day with them in the advisory council meeting, and we schedule that around the HIMSS trade show because they're already going to be there. So that's super economical. And, there's other opportunities to do things like that. If people are going to be in town for HIMSS, another example is Seal Shield's very involved in women in IT. And that is hosted, in fact, it's being hosted by Seal Shield this year during the HIMSS show as well, because you've got all the healthcare IT folks in town already for HIMSS. What a great opportunity to have a community get together for an hour or two around women in the IT workplace, or around any kind of the healthcare advisory council, any event where you're trying to get those people in a room, because we know how hard it is to get all those people somewhere where they can be together in person, especially around COVID. People are doing fewer and fewer things. So if they're committed to attend a trade show, what a great opportunity to sit them down, take an extra few hours, take an extra day to accomplish something else.
I could do a whole show on how smart it is to have a client advisory council, right? Like how you guys have created this like healthcare advisory council. I think the idea of the low hanging fruit that, man, if you have a set of clients that are all going to be there at a certain trade show, don't just, obviously you're going to invite them for dinner, but create some kind of environment where you are enlisting their help and their opinions is a really, really low hanging fruit. That's really, really intelligent.
I'd also add, when you do these experiences, you've got the pre-show planning to get everything booked, get the right people to attend, but then you've got the post-show follow-up from that. So you've done a big event, you want to make sure that you're getting the ROI from it. So as you know, when we go to a concert, we're going to take the expensive $50 group picture that's done by the professional photographer there. And if we have to buy 20 copies of that, so be it, because that is the memorial. Now that's the giveaway that they remember things by. And if you're really smart and you're on top of your game, you take those pictures and then you tell folks, hey, I'm going to get this framed and send it to you. Where do I send this to? And now you've got that built-in personal follow-up. So you want to make sure that you're not just doing these events, that you've planned them well on the front end, that you execute them well to build those relationships, and that you have the follow-up built into your strategy.
So smart. Yeah, Brad is a trade show genius, says Jen in the chat. I agree. This is amazing. Brad, you've also done some kind of genius moves that have gotten your hand slapped You wanna you want to talk about other big publicity moves that didn't really, may not have made the trade show happy, but still won for Seal Shield?
I would love to. We've got a number of them. A couple I can think of that we can laugh at now, but at the time were not very funny. One was early on. It wasn't our first trade show, but I think it was our second or our third HIMSS, and it was in Orlando at the Orange County Convention Center. And operating on a shoestring budget, you're trying to do all kinds of guerrilla marketing. And one of the great ideas that we had was that we made urinal screens for all of the men's restrooms. And then we have to explain to women what a urinal screen is. But in men's restrooms, we have urinals, and they put a screen in the bottom of that urinal so that it's a splash guard. And we put urinal screens in all of the convention center restrooms, the men's rooms, that said, your keyboard has 400 times more bacteria than this toilet. Come visit Seal Shield at booth number 123. And we got tremendous feedback from that. People would come running out of the restroom like, I just had to see you guys. That is genius. That is the greatest idea I've ever heard. So we got fantastic feedback from all the men who are using the restroom at the trade show. Unfortunately, we didn't get very good feedback from HIMSS, and HIMSS fined us for marketing outside of the booth, which is against their rules. And they made us actually go in the next morning before the trade show opened with coat hangers and remove all of the dirty urinal screens from all of the urinals in the vast Orange County Convention Center. So that was not too much fun. They stripped us of all our trade show points. It took us a number of years to build that back up. And for a number of years, and I think still today, HIMSS internally, when they're doing their orientation and prep calls for their internal people, they bring up Seal Shield and the urinal screens as something that is not permitted. So we did have that experience. Good marketing, bad execution, I guess, in terms of the rules. And then, I've mentioned the medical scrubs, which have been a great tool for us from a marketing standpoint. But a few years ago, some of the women in the organization said, we'd like to get pink scrubs to differentiate ourselves. So the guys can wear the blue scrubs, but we want to wear the pink scrubs. And we said, okay, that's fine. And then these women decided that we'd get creative. And as you know, we're an infection control company. So it's all about things, making things that are dirty, clean. And so on the back of the pink scrubs, they had "Talk Dirty to Me" put on the back of the scrubs. And we got a lot of good feedback from that, but we got a little bit of really bad feedback. So a couple of folks were offended by that. And as a result, the pink "Talk Dirty to Me" scrubs were retired. I think I could still get you a pair of those, Pablo. We may have some in storage, but another example of, thinking it through. And, you don't want to do anything that could be offensive to anyone. And since you're dealing with a large group of people, you just have to err on the side of caution so you don't end up with egg on your face like we did with pink Talk Dirty to Me scrubs. So those are a couple of the fails. I can think of maybe a couple of more, but those were really the notable ones that were not too funny at the time, but we can laugh at now.
I mean, I'm just gonna ask it, right? Like based on the fine and what happened, you're obviously not gonna do it again. You're not gonna purposefully offend HIMSS again. But if I am somebody that is out there wondering if I should walk this line one more time to get all this publicity, should that person that's considering it maybe still do it based on the ROI of attention and publicity?
Well, we had a couple of thousand urinal screen protectors left over after they were banned. And so we had to do something with those. So at future shows, we would put them in the hotel bathrooms at the hotels around the trade show. So we wouldn't be in direct violation of the trade show marketing rules. This comes up. We had, as you know, a giant seal costume to represent Seal Shield, and we'd make the new guy wear that at the trade shows, and we'd get in trouble from time to time about marketing outside the booth. We'd send the seal out into the crowd and get your hand slapped, and with no real ramifications. Just stay in the booth. So I guess the advice is, ask for forgiveness instead of permission, but just be aware that even asking for forgiveness may get your hand slapped, and there may be some consequences to whatever actions you take.
Got it, man. I love it. I love it. Sounds like you really pissed them off, huh? All right. I had to throw that out there.
Yeah,
I figured everybody uses that joke when you tell that story, right?
That was the first time. You're on your game.
Stop it. Stop. Brad, I'd love to talk about, I want to talk about your latest strategies and what we did at HIMSS this last time around, and what you got planned going forward. Real quick, when you're thinking about buying 20 passes to the Usher concert and a reservation for 8 at China Grill, and just going to throw it out there, Dwayne Wade was sitting behind us at the Usher concert. How do you think about ROI, man? When you think about the economics of, like, I'm about to drop this coin over here, how are you on the front end thinking about what the ROI can be, and what's the limit to buying out a skybox at an Orlando Magic?
But you have to measure the ROI for all these events and be honest about it. One of the biggest trade shows that we historically attended was CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, probably the largest electronics show in the world. It was in Vegas. It is in Vegas every year. And every year we would go. It's a very expensive show to attend, very expensive to stay in Vegas that week because there's so many attendees. And every year we would look at the ROI, and every year we'd pick up a couple of international distributors from that show. So we were able to justify it for a while, but it was tight. And ultimately we had to say, for what we're spending on this show and the number of quality leads that we're able to convert coming out of this show, we just get so much more bang for our buck from the healthcare specific shows, the infection control shows, that it's just not worth the cost for us to continue to do that show. And you have to be honest about that. You really have to look at the ROI that you're getting. And that's part of that post-show strategy, that you're able to measure the quality of the prospects and the conversion rate to customers, and see what kind of value you're getting out of the shows. And if you're not getting the value, you cut them. And there are shows that we don't do anymore, and there's shows we've doubled down on. And it's a little bit of a trial and error. So you've got to do the shows, see which shows work, and make that investment to see if you're getting the ROI. And if you're not getting the ROI, get out of that show and put the money somewhere else. And here's another, I guess, personal tip for investing in these shows. You spend so much money to go to the show. You spend money for the trade show booth, you spend money for the trade show space. The hotels are all marked up, X% above their normal rates. You're entertaining, expensive dinners. I would say that once you're committed to the show, don't cheap out. You don't want to be spending the evenings. Well, you might want to be spending the evenings after the trade show laying in your room relaxing, but there's no time for that. Once you're invested in the show, go all in. It's every hour of every day. And if you're not doing that, it's wasted opportunity. So if you spend all the money for a trade show booth and the trade show space and your airline and your hotel, and then you don't spring for the fancy dinner for the prospects or some experiential event that you're going to be able to convert prospects into customers, then you're really wasting the initial investment. It's not all about just showing up at 10 a.m. in your booth and scanning leads. It's about building a whole experience around the trade show that's going to contribute to that return on investment. So once you're in, go all in.
First of all, you just got me pumped up. Second, you answered my question ahead of time. I was going to ask, when you're going to go to the new one, are you kind of like dipping your toe in the water and, starting off with just like a basic booth or something to see what the prospects are? Or are you going all in with your initial strategy? If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then whatever, you tested the market. It sounds like the latter.
Yeah, at this stage at Seal Shield, we're going all in. If we're going to do a trade show, we're going to take the time to do the press releases and we're going to put them out on the wire. We are going to plan those events and make those reservations for the dinners for prospects and customers. We are going to go all in. And then after the show, again, you have to be honest with the return on investment. Was it worth it? And if it wasn't worth it, you put those investments into other opportunities, other trade shows, other marketing opportunities.
Love it, man. And right now I would love to just talk about this last hymn show and this future hymn shows that you're doing, right? You took a chance on a strategy that I started, like I did for the first time in 2019, kind of made sense. This idea of taking a part of your trade show booth, turning it into what looked like a recording studio, picking out a couple of like key, strategic relationships, interviewing them and providing them content on the back end. I would love for you to kind of explain from your perspective, kind of what you were signing up for, what it was like and what you thought of it. And then we'll just talk about how you are evolving from the first time that you did it and what you learned from it.
Well, there were a couple of things that we did for the first time at this last trade show, Pablo, and one of them was through our partnership with HIMSS. Obviously, they've forgiven us for the urinal screen debacle because we developed a great partnership with HIMSS, and through that partnership, we managed to have Seal Shield's products throughout the trade show and at surrounding hotels, so that attendees could actually disinfect their cell phones or their tablets at stations throughout the facility. And so that got us a lot of recognition at the show. And then it was all highlighted by the second thing we did that was different, which just got us amazing recognition. And that was the podcast that you talk about. And I didn't know what we were getting into. We'd really just met. I think that was the first time we'd spent more than an hour together in Las Vegas at the HIMSS show. And we set up that podcast booth right in our trade show booth. And we just started pulling people in, and we would pull in customers, we'd pull in partners, we'd pull in competitors to talk about the issues around infection control, to talk about the issues around healthcare and healthcare IT. And the results were just amazing. Everyone at that massive trade show knew who we were. We were the only ones with a podcast set up, filming people as they come up, getting people that we normally would not have been able to talk to wanted to come on to the podcast for whatever their individual reason was, to promote their passions and their missions, their products and services. And we just got tremendous visibility out of it. And that's when I knew, Pablo, hey, we've got something here. I mean, this is amazing. Everybody wants to be on this podcast platform, and there really isn't another platform like it in the infection control space. So now, after the HIMSS trade show, which is where we kicked this whole thing off, we've been continuing with the podcast, having a live podcast every week with various guests around issues facing infection control and infection prevention. And it's been great for Seal Shield. It's been great for me personally. And it's been great for the industry. And we are going to replicate that for the second time here at HIMSS coming up this year in Orlando. And I think we'll do an even better job now because we'll be able to pre-schedule some strategic guests and then still have kind of that open mic setup where as opportunities come along, we can have them sit down, get them on mic and start discussing the issues of the day. And, when someone does that, that again, is building that relationship and giving you a great follow-up opportunity, because all those people, and Pablo, you were doing a great job of this for us at the trade show. As soon as they were done filming, they got a text or an email with the links, and overnight you were staying up late doing the editing so that we could get them clips in the morning and keep that momentum going. And then once we published those through our site, again, an opportunity to follow up with the prospect or customer, another touch point. It's really an experience like no other. So it takes a little bit of courage to take that initial plunge, but I highly recommend it. We're definitely seeing the ROI out of the podcast that we launched at HIMSS, and we're continuing to get value out of that and looking forward to doing it at HIMSS again this year.
First of all, thank you for the glowing review there at the end. When we and I'm super pumped that it worked for you, right? Like to me, like as the days and hymns went on, I saw you getting, first kind of starting off. You're like, all right, man, I got to talk to this person for like 15 minutes. 15 minutes? You think 15 minutes is good? I'm like, dude, you're good. You're good. We're gonna, have this conversation. You were awesome, right? Like it was clear to me there that we had like a golden person behind this, on camera to do
Thank
this,
you.
and I thought that was really, really cool. When I first thought of this, to me, it's I haven't done a lot of buying my own trade show booths, but I am a networking fanatic, right? So like I love trade shows, I crush conferences. And to me, I've always thought that people inside of a booth are kind of in a fishbowl, right? Like they have this like stuff to give you and they're trying to pull you in and it feels kind of like Mexican flea market-ish. But I thought that something I've always noticed is that when lights are on and a camera is on, the American public will stop and look to see who's filming, right? So I saw it as kind of like, number one, it grabs attention. Two, the idea that, and you guys really bought into this, but the idea that your salespeople roaming around the floor, if they met somebody interesting, they'd be like, oh my God, you're so interesting. You should come talk to Brad on the show. That's an immediate kind of like bring somebody close and give them a good experience. And third, the follow-up mechanism, right? Like the idea that I'm scanning someone's badge, I'm going to email them something, as opposed to I'm going to text them a picture of them looking like a celebrity. And then the next day we're going to give them a little video for their LinkedIn that they've never had something like that done for them before. To me was, the origin of this stuff that we first did at Emerge Americas. You guys were able to execute it really well. So you said that you had people set up ahead of time, right? Like you had interviewed, you had some people lined up to be interviewed. You used the space to also shoot some other company promo videos while you were there. And then you also had the open kind of like session that I think led to some serendipitous stuff like the senators and the keynote speakers that came to speak. What am I missing that you guys prepped on the back end, first of all, before I ask you what you're going to do next that's different?
Well, honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of prep. We were leaning on you, Pablo, and I showed up not knowing what to expect. And we kind of learned as we went along. But it really is, to your point, just like that giant picture of the keyboard in the water and the keyboards in the dishwasher, it's that differentiation. It's like, wait a minute, I'm looking at hundreds of booths. This one's different. They're filming a show in their booth. What's that about? And as you mentioned, we were able to make introductions with people that we would have never talked to. We had state senators that we got on the show talking about some of the issues around COVID. And it just really opened up the door to those discussions. And another thing you mentioned I wanted to touch on, you talk about the trade show booth being a fishbowl. You've got to make sure that you have scheduled time for you and your people to get out on the floor in waves, right? So schedule people to go out and go around the floor, make those introductions at other people's booths, because some people never leave their booth. And if you get stuck in the fishbowl, you're going to miss something. So a combination of having the booth well manned, drawing people into the booth through things that differentiate you, like the podcast, and then also getting your folks out on the floor to identify opportunities and maybe bring you back later or bring the customer or prospect to your booth, and maybe they end up on your podcast. Who knows?
Let's talk about that, right? Because I do think that is a key thing that I noticed. For me, it's natural to just see your company full of social animals and really, really cool people, and they were roaming the floor. But you're right. Most companies get a booth, and their salespeople and or their marketing people just kind of like sit around the booth, waiting to be approached. Did you have to hammer that home? Is that something that you guys have
Yes.
Okay, tell me more.
Yes. So, that drives me crazy too. So we actually have a no sit policy at the trade shows, which sometimes the new employees are like, are you serious? Yeah, we're serious, because there's nothing that pushes people away more than to walk up to a booth and people are sitting around doing nothing, or they're engaged in their own thing, they're on their cell phones, whatever it is. You have to be, when you're in the booth, you have to be working the booth. You have to be trying to draw people in, telling the story, getting people to listen to the story, be approachable. And we, as I mentioned, like to use our trade shows as team building events. So we'll typically bring a large group of our folks to the trade shows. We want to make a presence. We want to use it as a team building event. there is a downside to having too many people in the booth. So it's a fine line between having enough people to service the prospects in the booth and having too many people in the booth. You end up in conversations. It looks prohibitive to get in the booth. So, we might have 10 or 12 sales reps at a trade show. You'll never see 10 or 12 in the booth. They're scheduled out walking around, and we've determined that we need 4 people to man the booth for these hours, and work that angle. The rest of the people need to be out during their scheduled hours around the show, prospecting for opportunities outside the booth. You don't want to have too few people in the booth. You don't want to have too many people in the booth. And the people that are in the booth need to be engaged, not on their phone, not sitting down, not eating lunch, engaged and work in the booth.
Totally, man. I couldn't agree more. Trina Sorecchia, who's hanging out with us, she's got a question. She wants to know what kind of guests you bring onto the Seal Shield podcast, because she's got a background in healthcare IT and software and marketing and copywriting. Man, tell us about who you talk to on the Clean Talk pod. So first of all, it's called Clean Talk, but go ahead, Brad. I'll let you talk about it.
So the show is called Clean Talk. And as I mentioned, we launched it at the HIMSS Healthcare IT Trade Show last August, and we've been continuing the show. You can go to cleantalk.tv to register or check out our Clean Talk YouTube channel. And it's a platform for infection control and infection prevention. Seal Shield is focused on solving the problem of hospital-acquired infections and cross-contamination infections in general. And there really has been a lack of a platform for people in the infection control space to share best practices, to share new technologies, issues that face healthcare practitioners every day. So typically the people that are on the Clean Talk podcast are either infection preventionists, they might be healthcare IT people, they might be physicians. We've had technology innovators in the space, do a lot of technology innovation episodes, and we've even had a couple of competitors on. Again, we wanted to make it an agnostic platform, not just promoting Seal Shield's products. In fact, we try to steer clear of making it an advertising pitch for Seal Shield and really have it be an open platform to help solve the problems surrounding infection prevention and specifically hospital-acquired infections.
This is what I mean by company on a mission, man, that enlists people. This is awesome, right? Like part of Jerry's language. Julianne Eason writes in the chat, really good advice. I could see having a book written on the spot with people coming in to give their best tips for XYZ, right? Like best practices. Then after the show, send them a copy of a physical book with their name on it and have like a compilation book of best practices for hospital IT managers or infection control officers or something like that. Sounds like a strategy you might put in the old top hat and think about there, Brad.
Good feedback. That's a great idea.
So Brad, so you did it one time, you didn't know what you were getting into, you kind of parachuted in and you counted on me. You guys are doing Orlando HIMSS coming up. What's the plan? Actually, you know what? Not just the podcast. What's your overall like go-to plan right now for Orlando HIMSS since it's coming right now?
Well, Orlando's a home game for us. That's where we're headquartered. So we'll have a big presence there. So a lot of Seal Shield employees in blue scrubs. We've got a couple of big press releases coming out about some new products that we will be launching at HIMSS as per our typical strategy. We've planned some big events. Tuesday night of HIMSS, we have a giant double suite for the Orlando Magic Brooklyn Nets game. And we've got a bunch of things planned during that event to keep it engaging. So a lot of side bets that people can make to get Seal Shield swag, and everybody's getting an official NBA Seal Shield jacket at that event. So, that's what we have planned for HIMSS. Of course, we will be filming the podcast live in the booth, and we will have some opportunities set up, pre-scheduled for that podcast from the trade show. And then of course we'll be taking walk-up opportunities for the trade show as well. I mentioned that our Chief Technology Officer, Christian Davis, will be presenting at HIMSS this year. And Seal Shield is hosting the Women in IT tea luncheon. And several of the women in our company are spearheading that. We're also doing that around HIMSS this year. So a bunch of events scheduled for HIMSS, and we're really looking forward to having it be a home game in Orlando, Florida this year.
Jackets given out for the game. You guys doing the whole like everybody looking one way thing. I love that, man. That sounds really cool.
So I got to tell you, I'm thinking of it. So we did another basketball event a few years ago, and we tied it in with a spa event. So we did a spa retreat, and we gave everybody these plush blue Seal Shield robes, and they were very popular. And then we all wore the Seal Shield robes to the basketball game suite. So, of course, we were quite a spectacle. And then we'd arranged to get our picture taken on the court after the game in the robes. That's a great shot. We still use it in our marketing today. But those robes are very popular. But one of our employees, our VP of HR, Steve Miklos, loved that robe so much that he, I don't think, took it off for weeks. And when we had a hymns show in Vegas, he decided to be what he calls a company brand ambassador, and he wore his Seal Shield robe on the plane that morning flying to Las Vegas. And I can't tell you how many people came up to me at that trade show and said, "Hey, I saw your boy Steve. He was on my flight." Because how could you miss him? It's 6 a.m. He's wearing sunglasses and a blue robe. Which brings me to my next tip, Pablo, that the trade show actually starts when you arrive at your home airport. And this was something that was taught to me by one of my former sales associates, and it's so true. I've seen it play out a couple of times in my experience. Think about it. You go to the airport and you're getting on a flight to go to a trade show in another city. And if you're like me and you live in Jacksonville, that means you're connecting through Atlanta. Well, the vast majority of people on that flight from Atlanta to Las Vegas or Chicago or New Orleans or wherever you're going, the vast majority of the people on that flight are going to that trade show. So think about that. So if you're a jerk when you travel, and we all have our travel quirks, but remember, you are actually with your prospects before you even met them when you show up at the airport. And I've seen it play out a few times. I gave you the example with Steve wearing the robe, but I've also seen it work the other way, where someone is a jerk at the airport, and then when you get to Las Vegas, you see it blow up in their face because all of a sudden people that were waiting to get on that flight who all saw this guy being a jerk, now they're the prospects you're trying to break into, and you have no chance. So that's the other tip. The trade show officially begins when you arrive at your home airport. Help people out with their bags, give big smiles, because there's a good chance that you're going to see those people again when you land.
Such underrated advice. And you pair that with like the fact that you give unique people unique pieces of clothing that they're into wearing throughout stuff, and like you tie all that stuff together. I think it's brilliant, man. Really, really smart. Have you ever thought, I had a guest on in the past, Andrew Smallwood. They arranged to like pick up their guests, like their clients, right? Like they rented like a couple of like trucks or whatever, right? Like a couple Tahoes, pick people up from the airport. Have you ever done any kind of like transportation to and from the airport or anything else like that?
I don't know if we've done airport transportation, but we've done numerous transportations. So we'll have something arranged to get everybody from the convention center over to the Orlando arena. We usually get a party bus, or depending on the size of the group, a limo. And in fact, that's another one of my tips. If you are traveling to these shows, like in Las Vegas, and it's a big trade show, pre-arrange your travel to the show each day. If you can arrange to get a limo or an SUV to pick you up at the same time every morning and pick you up around the corner from the trade show every evening, you will save yourself a ton of hassle. Everybody's trying to get in and out of that show, which actually brings up another good point. If you are responsible for making all the reservations for your team going to these trade shows, it makes sense to consolidate that. So I book all the rooms and I book all the events, and then I get those points. So we use MGM in Las Vegas, and if you're MGM Platinum, you get front of the line taxi cab access. So if you're MGM Platinum, you don't have to arrange for a car. You go right to the front of the line, and that has a couple of effects. One, you're going to be on time to the trade show. The other thing is that everybody sees your group of people in blue scrubs cut the line that they've been waiting in for an hour, and they're A, impressed, and B, maybe a little disappointed that they're not on your team because they're waiting to get to that trade show and they're probably going to be late. So look for those hotel perks that can make your trade show experience a better one. And that's a big one, at least with MGM M Life.
Brad, my big regret for this show is that I did not have like a counter going up every single time you drop the tip. Like, were you like, here's another tip, right? Like if I had it just counted like ding, ding, ding going up, man, I think we're going to have to make that. We're going to have to make that piece of micro content of you just dropping tip after tip and drop it as like Brad's trade show tips. And
post-production.
The magic will be in the post-production. Brad, I really, man, you're a genius when it comes to this stuff and so many other things that I see, right? Like I think when I first texted you, when I first really started outwardly displaying my man crush for you, I think it was like maybe the third time that I tried to get a hold of you, and I'm like, oh, I'm front row at the Tampa Bay Lightning. Oh, I'm at this concert. Like you have this like amazing life. You brought amazing people around you, man. And I really appreciate you doing this show with me and taking the time to give me advice and be my friend and you know, like introduce me to people. I just want to give you like a very sincere gratitude for showing the way of how you build a company with a great culture, with a tangible mission that people get behind, and being able to show up the way that you do and making time for this, man. I really, really appreciate you doing this show. Is there anything I haven't asked you about or anything else that you want to talk about?
Well, no, but you know, I'll return the compliment, Pablo. I mean, you really showed us the way on this podcast opportunity. You made it easy for us. It's going to be a big part of our trade show strategies moving forward. And, you know, this would have never happened if it weren't for you showing us the way there. And I appreciate your friendship and your partnership, and certainly look forward to doing more great things with you. And I really appreciate you bringing visibility to the things that I'm proud of, that before the podcast and all this dialogue, you know, we weren't able to communicate. As you know, we're very passionate about our vision and our mission to prevent infections and save lives. And we're very passionate about our team and our ownership thinking community here at Seal Shield. And it's been a great platform to be able to discuss these things. And I'm happy to share my experiences. I really enjoy talking with you. So thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome, man. Awesome. It's such a pleasure. I want to thank Ice Artie, Jen Filzen, Julianne Eason, Russ give it to me.
Verhoevic.
God, it sounds so simple. And Trina Soraccia for hanging out with us for an hour, listening to me and Brad go back and forth. Thank you for showing up. Brad, I look forward to seeing you in Orlando, my man. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Pablo. It's been fun.
See ya.
Appreciate you. Take
Bye.
care.
You too.